Brazil is bracing for round 2 of the country's presidential election. The first round was close, and this heated contest will resume on the 30th of October. The pollsters got it horribly wrong. Lula was not leading against Bolsonaro by the 10 to 15% margin as they predicted. Round 1 was much closer than anticipated, and the incumbent president Jair Bolsonaro only trailed behind the former president Lula da Silva by around 5% of the vote share. And the two will go head-to-head in a runoff vote later this month. Lula, however, failed to grab more than 50% of the valid votes required to win the election outright. He received about 48.4% of the votes compared to Bolsonaro's 43.2%. It is a slim lead, but a lead nonetheless. 9 other candidates contested for a chance to be the country's president, and their vote shares were minuscule as compared to what Lula and Bolsonaro received. Round 2 will likely be decided by where supporters of the 9 other candidates put their votes. Lula da Silva says he is up for the fight.
It's like this. The fight continues until the final victory. That's our motto.
Bolsonaro may be trailing behind Lula da Silva, but he declared victory against the opinion polls' predictions.
We beat the lie today, which was data fuller giving 51% to 30% and a few. We beat the lie.
In fact, Bolsonaro had criticized the opinion polls ahead of the election, saying that they did not reflect reality. His supporters, who include evangelical Christians and gun enthusiasts, showed up in enough numbers to force a runoff. Tensions in Brazil will continue for the next few weeks. Bolsonaro had hinted previously that he may not concede even if he lost. The relatively slim margin seen in round 1 could embolden him further. If Bolsonaro's antics seem familiar, you are not the only one who's noticed. He is known as the tropical Trump for a reason. And with me on the broadcast this minute is Mauricio Santoro, political scientist and a professor at the State University of Rio de Janeiro. Thanks very much for being here. I have to ask you to tell us more about the mood on the ground and your assessment of what round 1 revealed.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you. And the most important results of yesterday's votes show us that Bolsonaro is not just an accident of history of the last election in Brazil, but instead he represents a very strong political movement with strong social roots in Brazil. So what we see now today in Brazil is that there is this new conservative wave in the country, very strong, and that is very well organized and present on social media and on the streets. And that's going to be more difficult than many people were imagining for Lula and for the left to defeat Bolsonaro.
Bolsonaro had earlier hinted that he may not concede even if he lost. And the relatively slim margin that we've seen in round 1 could embolden him further. What can we expect from Jair Bolsonaro, according to you?
It's true, and it's not just about he's been saying that he will refuse the results, but also he has been saying that we cannot trust the polls, that the polls do not show the real truth of Brazilian voters. And he was right. I mean, the polls were very wrong yesterday, not just about the presidential election, but also about the disputes for state governors and for the Brazilian Congress. And in every case, they underestimated the strength of Bolsonaro and his supporters. So now his supporters are going to be much more enthusiastic about refusing the results and charging the Brazilian elections of being mistaken, of being frauded. So this is going to be a very tense second round, and the next month will be a difficult campaign for both candidates with the risk of street violence.
Right. For the benefit of our viewers watching from different parts of the world, Mauricio, tell us more about why this election is so significant for Brazil.
Okay, so Bolsonaro was elected president 4 years ago, and it was a very different type of election in Brazil, with a strong anti-political feeling, with a strong rejection of the traditional way of doing politics in Brazil. And many people were in doubt if Bolsonaro was going to be able to keep this popularity, especially because of the pandemic, because of the economic crisis. And many people fear that Bolsonaro is a threat to Brazilian democracy because of the way that he attacks the Supreme Court, the journalists, the opposition parties. He represents in Brazil this new brand of populist democracy that we see, for example, with Donald Trump in the United States. So for many people, this is not just an ordinary election in Brazil, a choice between different candidates, but also the possibility of a big risk to keep the Brazilian democratic institutions.
All right, Mauricio, we're leaving it there for the moment. Of course, we will be keeping a very close eye on the developments as they unfold in Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.